civilization, fallen angels, space race, Star Wars, Bible, prophecy. Get back, enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the New World Order, where your mind is not your own, unless you take it back. Where left is right, and right is wrong, and wrong is a part of the left and the right. Follow the light, and is it really bright? Is the light really light, or the dark? And is the dark right, or wrong? And is wrong right? Because after all, the New World Order programming, I'm not sure which way is left or right. And if I feel it to be right, is that still in the light? Or is it dark to be choosing one or the other? It's so confusing in the land of the New World Order, where if you can feel it, taste, smell, touch, someone tells you it might not be your own. And what is your own if everything is from the same zone? I don't know in the New World Order. The land of the free, the land of the zombie. Breaking down the matrix around you, following the rabbit hole so deep, you think you might just lose your mind. And you might, only to find it again, wiser, smarter, faster, stronger, and more in tune with the vibration of life. What does as above, so below really mean? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is a frequency. Everything breaks down into a vibrational sequence or code. How do we harness the power of this code? Are there individuals, groups, beings, entities that have already learned to harness these vibrational frequencies? What I'm going to share with you now is some compelling information and evidence of what I feel could be a type 2 or type 3 type civilization, maybe from our past ancestors, or maybe from intelligence from another planet. Here we go. This is the Eye of Saturn. Look at that hexagon shape. This is incredible. I would like to know how the gravity, or whatever it is that makes the universe work, caused this to be so almost perfect. Now, this right here I'm also fascinated with is when you look at the rings of Saturn. The rings of Saturn are just beautiful. And how does gravity cause this to be lined up so perfectly? It almost looks like a higher level of design, essentially, in my opinion. Now, have you guys heard of the Ring Makers of Saturn? The Ring Makers of Saturn is a great book that I'd strongly recommend finding a copy of. Matter of fact, here we go. The Ring Makers of Saturn by Norman R. Berggren. And if you go through this book, you will find some very compelling images and data on the rings of Saturn. David Icke also talks about the rings of Saturn being some type of transmission or antenna, and that very well could be. Talk to Gerald Clark about the human antenna and how powerful our own bodies are with gravity. And when we get that lined up perfectly, it's almost like you're floating, he says. It's incredible. So I think that's pretty cool. So take a look at this and just kind of consider the possibilities of how this is created. Now, what I'm going to talk to you about next is the moons of Saturn. A whole bunch of moons around Saturn, but my favorite are Mimas, Iapetus, which is way outside here, and there's another one I want to share with you here in just a moment. So here's Mimas, and this ginormous crater, you're going to find a common theme with multiple moons that are orbiting Saturn. And the official story is this is a giant crater, essentially. You know, I mean, a huge asteroid blast, some type of comet hit it, and then you can see something in the middle here that pops up. Now, regardless, just to see it once on one moon, you can say, okay, sure, I can see the possibility that that's why it looks just like the Death Star from Star Wars, essentially. But then when you notice it's not just this one moon, you'll also find it on this moon, right there. See that? Same crater site, essentially, about the same location, same size, and then in the center you've got stuff that actually comes up. You look at the Death Star right here, Return of the Jedi, excellent film. But look at the blast site right here. You'll see the blast site here and here, okay? And then here's the powerful weapon here in the center. And if you look at these craters, you'll notice that it doesn't really look circular either. That almost looks like a hexagon, once again. So you zoom in on that, and you can tell here, if you look at it closely, there's some smoothing of the edges. Looks like maybe a little bit of Photoshop there. And the craters themselves are quite unique. I look at these things, and just by the shadowing and such, I think there's more to this. Now, take a look at this one right here. I think it's pronounced Tethys. Could be wrong. If I am, I apologize. Just look at that right there. You've got about the same size of a crater site on this moon. Humongous. There's the Death Star, once again. Okay, so where's Iapetus? This one's got the farthest and longest orbit around Saturn. And in my opinion, this is my favorite. And it's about as close to the Death Star as you're going to get. Look at that. Let's go back and forth here. Zoom in on this a little bit for us. Okay. So, here we go. And this right here is even more of an anomaly. This is called the ridge. And this ridge goes around the entire circumference of this moon. And it's approximately 20 miles high and 20 miles wide. Goes around the entire moon, 20 miles high, 20 miles wide. And look at some of these craters, you guys. Do those look circular, or do those look more like hexagons? And then you can see the huge crater on the right here. And you compare that to the Death Star of Return of the Jedi. And you know who originally I found this information out from several years ago was Kevin. He's got a really cool website. I don't know if he keeps it updated much anymore, but he's got some incredible images and breakdown and analysis. Go to enterprisemission.com. We interviewed Kevin a while ago, about a year ago, and that is one of our most popular podcasts. So hopefully we'll get him back on the show again soon. And you can see right here, you got another one of those enormous craters that doesn't really look circular. Another really neat thing about this specific moon is on one side, it's white, and on the other side, it's got this weird element that makes it almost stealth. You can't even see it on certain eclipses and images. It's like this carbon fiber stealth type material almost. It's quite fascinating. So that's another strange anomaly about Iapetus. And there's been people that have done remote viewing on Iapetus, like the Farsight Institute, Dick Algeier, Daz Smith. They claim that it's like a resort, essentially, an old resort. I think there's more to it. I think that Iapetus, if it is an artificial structure, I'm not saying it is, if it is, I wouldn't be surprised if it was maybe used as some type of weapon system. Imagine having a CERN-type technology that was weaponized. Let's go far out here for a minute. This is the internet. We can talk about things that don't fit within the typical parameters. If you want to build something to that extent, you want to build a death ray, you need a whole bunch of space to build it, and this thing goes around the entire moon, and you've got that Death Star beam right there. Maybe there was a war millions and millions of years ago. Maybe the biblical texts that talk about the fallen angels coming down from heaven, maybe that was a space war. Maybe people give these people, if this is legit, if this hypothesis is accurate, maybe the correlation of the ancient scriptures and texts that talk about these mythical beings are just advanced people. And due to wars and politics and everything else that goes into play, you usually learn about the history of the victors what they want you to hear about. Kind of like we've talked about these non-commodity treaties texts that I'm sure many of you haven't heard of. And those of you that have, I applaud you. And those of you that haven't, it's because this stuff's been suppressed. And even if you've heard of it, have you really dove into these texts? I mean, the information is just incredible. So if this is an ancient structure or moon, artificial, or maybe it was retrofitted to be some type of space defense, it's just something to think about. Because if it's just one moon, I can understand it being just an anomaly. But if it's three, I think that adds to it a little bit. And then you see these images, once again, programming via media. Well, that was just in a movie, so you're a conspiracy theorist. That was Star Wars. There's no way that can be true. I've read that in so many comments on that interview I did with Mr. Hoagland about when he made the comment, he thinks that he basically said that there's a lot of truth and history in Star Wars. Hey, maybe there is. Maybe there isn't. So here's Mimas. And once again, take a look at this huge blast site here. About the same size. You've got these weird looking craters that don't really look circular. They look more like hexagons. They've got sharper edges. They've got mountainous areas inside of many of these craters, which I find odd that if something hits something, how is something then going to grow in the center of that if it's just rock? Anyway, I think you guys are catching my drift. I don't know if I'm explaining that the best way. So let's go back to Iaptus here for a second. Death Star, rings of Saturn. Now, I want to talk about as above, so below. Some people look at that as a dark saying and it's wicked and evil. Some people think it means just esoteric knowledge. I think there's a scientific aspect to that as well. Now, this is a neuron. This is anatomy of a neuron, and they've got images, essentially of synapses here. Let's take a look at this. Here's some neurons. This is what happens when they form. Beautiful, isn't it? Now let's look at an experiment that was done by NASA. This is credit to NASA. You can go to nasa.gov and look at this. Essentially, a numerological simulation of the density of matter when the universe was 1 billion years old. Galaxies' formations followed the gravitational wells produced by the dark matter when hydrogen gas, yada, 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 yada. Okay, this is supposed to be an image of the known universe, essentially. Image of the known universe right here. Thank you, NASA. An interpretation. Looks just like a synapse. As above, so below. That would be my interpretation, although it's also multifaceted. You can give one definition that can have infinite meanings and infinite opportunities. That's the beauty of life and being co-creators. I've been called a dozen names, at least, because I say we're all co-creators. Some people look at that as dark and taken away from God and source. Absolutely not. Far from it. It's the exact opposite. Even if you look at the Abrahamic text, there's scriptures that say God created man. Well, it actually says the gods created men in their image, essentially. Okay, now this right here is also incredible. You can go to this specifically. This is like the Google library, and it's called the Annals of Electricity, Magnetism, and Chemistry. This is like from the 1800s. Scientists accidentally create spontaneous life with electricity and crystals, detailed and documented in the American Journal of Science. Why don't we hear about this stuff in school? Well, in 1837, folks, Andrew Cross reported to the London Electrical Society concerning the accidental spontaneous generation of life in the form of Occurus genus insects while he was conducting experiments on the formation of artificial crystals by means of prolonged exposure to weak electric current throughout numerous strict experiments under a wide variety of conditions utterly inimical to life as we know it. The insects continue to manifest. Now, you've all heard of Faraday cages. I'm sure most of you have. The great Michael Faraday also reported to the Royal Institute that he had replicated the experiment. Soon afterwards, all notice of the phenomenon ceased to be reported, and the matter has not been resolved since then. So literally, bugs were created with electricity and crystals. Boom, out of thin air. And there's several references to this. The American Journal of Science and Arts, Volume 35, January 1839. Also, M. Roberton, Annals of Electricity, Magnetism, and Chemistry, Volume 2, pages 355 through 360, January and June 1838. And Sir David Brewster, British Association Report, 1855, page 9, on the existence of Akari in mica. How cool is that? Or maybe it's all just a big conspiracy, or maybe the tests that they did were messed up. These are questions that we can all ask each other. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure to be the change you want to see. This is Rex Bear. We'll talk to you soon. Artificial moons, Archons, Anunnaki, Type 3 civilization, fallen angels, space race, Star Wars, Bible, prophecy. Kick back, enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the New World Order, where your mind is not your own, unless you take it back. Where left is right, and right is wrong, and wrong is a part of the left and the right. Follow the light, and is it really bright? Is the light really light, or the dark? And is the dark right or wrong? And is wrong right? Because after all, the New World Order programming, I'm not sure which way is left or right. And if I feel it to be right, is that still in the light? Or is it dark to be choosing one or the other? It's so confusing in the land of the New World Order, where if you can feel it, taste, smell, touch, someone tells you it might not be your own. And what is your own if everything is from the same zone? I don't know in the New World Order. The land of the free, the land of the zombie. Breaking down the matrix around you, following the rabbit hole so deep, you think you might just lose your mind. And you might, only to find it again, wiser, smarter, faster, stronger, and more in tune with the vibration of life. What does as above, so below really mean? In the beginning was the Word, and the Word is a frequency. Everything breaks down into a vibrational sequence or code. How do we harness the power of this code? Are there individuals, groups, beings, entities that have already learned to harness these vibrational frequencies? What I'm going to share with you